She got 8 or almost a foot of sludge and mud in the bottom of her house. So they have to, they have to decide what they're going to do. Yeah.
And I can't quite make out who's in the room. I see Josh, Stephen, and Jordan. Anybody else?
And I think, isn't Steve Hand coming via Zoom? Or he's coming in through a call, maybe he said. I don't know if he's doing video.
Okay. And I don't think they can hear us. Or we can't hear them.
Now you can.
Now you can.
Hey. So who's it?
Josh can do everything basically. he's doing all of the tech. He's running the meeting. He's keeping attendance.
And he's plugging in the cables.
I just had to move the
little kid
to the other side of the room. So that is why. So Arlene, we need to address your microphone issue.
My microphone?
Yes, it's.
Try to go on mute because we're hearing a lot of scratching.
Okay, because all right.
And again, in the room, I see Josh, Jordan, Stephen, and Jay.
Yeah, correct. That worked, Arlene.
So there are only 4 of you there.
There are 4 of us in the room.
Yeah. Please have microphones near your mouth. Including me. Best quality possible. Okay, Arlene, could you unmute and perhaps try another microphone?
Can you hear me now?
Very scratchy.
Produce a lot of static.
Just a lot of static. Okay.
You may have more than one microphone to choose from. Susan, thank you for being patient while we work through our technical difficulties.
I'll take your time. Perfectly fine.
Do you have a class in this one?
Arlene, you sound fine now. Can you talk to us?
Okay, how do I sound now?
That's perfect.
Okay, I had headphones on, maybe that did something to it. So
Okay.
I'll do the meeting this way.
Okay, great. And I just want to look at the live stream to make sure it all looks good.
And I finished my dinner, so I'll join you all.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is 6:09. Welcome, everyone. Let's open it up for public comment. I always open it with this, although the public doesn't attend. But I just do this so if any committee member has comments from the greater public that they'd like to share, now would be a good time to do it. Okay. So seeing nothing, let's move on to the approval of the minutes from October 6th.
I have one addition. The minutes failed to mention that Susan was present via Zoom.
Okay.
I say we get rid of the secretary. Huh?
Not a chance.
Damn.
Not so easy. Well, I'll entertain a motion with that note.
I move we accept the minutes.
Okay. Motion moved by Jay, seconded by Jordan. Any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Arlene, how do you vote?
I accept the minutes.
Okay, Michael?
Approve.
Okay, Jay?
Yay.
Jordan?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It is unanimous. Okay, and moving on now to discussion with Susan Corbett about Lincolnville's digital equity and digital inclusion plan. Susan, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm excited to join you tonight and for step 2 in building your digital equity and digital inclusion plan. So I'm just going to make sure I can share a screen, and I can. So we're going to bring up tonight, we're going to talk about demographics. And I have for you, can you all see that spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, good. So this data is coming from the American Community Survey data. It's the most up-to-date statistics that we can put our hands on. It is from 2020, and it was released just several months ago. Starts with the geography in Lincolnville, and then we go right into what is the composition of your town. And so what we know is that for the average family, median income is about $57,159. You have 4% of your population have family median income of $10,000 or less. And then when we add up the percentage of homes that have income of $34,900 or less, it is about 21% of your community. That's an important number to remember, because when you're looking at building broadband, making sure that affordability is not a barrier for folks that want to sign up. So we're going to want to make sure we address that in your digital equity plan. And then the income starts to gradually go up. You keep in mind that family median income might mean 2 people in a household, 1 person in a household. We'll see some statistics about that a little bit later on in this demographics. You're going to see a bunch of graphs on the right-hand side. These are graphs that we're going to put, we will insert in your digital equity plan. It's a little bit easier for public to read in a graph form than sort of the dryness of a spreadsheet. So that's what you're seeing on the right side of the screen. There are 2,066 people in your town, broken down between male and female, and you can see we're breaking it down by ages. 53% of your community are age 50 and older, which means that in your digital equity plan of addressing technology for older adults in your community, it should be a priority. I really believe that the earlier we can get older adults engaged with technology, the easier it is as they get older and they're used to using technology on a regular basis. That said, I may have shared with you before that 57% of our students are 55 and older, and 8% of our students are 80 and older. So we have a lot of older students. It tells me that if somebody wants to learn, they can. And feel free to stop me at any point along the way as we're going through this. This is a lot of information, and it to sort of absorb in one sitting. I am going to send you all this spreadsheet so you'll be able to take a closer look at it in the weeks ahead. Educational attainment, this is based on the population 25 and older. 4% of your community members do not have a diploma, 20% have a high school diploma or equivalency, and then it starts to graduate. You've got a 34% of your community have a bachelor's degree, which is actually pretty high compared to other rural communities in the state. Arlene, you had sent an email around the population and how the population had shifted. So these numbers are pretty close to what you were observing, I think. You're off by a couple, but pretty close to it. Breakdown of race, not surprisingly, 95% of the population is white. You have a small amount that are of Hispanic or a couple of different ethnicities. There's a 2% are Asian in your community. Again, that's just pretty typical of this across the whole state. There are 921 households that have met. So there are 921 households. Of that, 648 are family households. 4.5% of those households have met the federal guidelines, federal poverty guidelines. So this is different than the number of 34,900 or less, or 10,000 or less. So a family of four, we have with a family income of 45,000 may meet those federal poverty guidelines. So that's just so when you're looking at affordability, it's not just in the amount of money per household, it's those households that are also meeting federal poverty guidelines. You're pretty consistent on the unemployment rate in the state, 4.8%. The average home in Lincolnville has a value of $271,600. There are 921 households. Of them, as we said, 648 are family household. 595 are married coupled families with children, and then an additional with children under the age of 18. 53 of your families are single parent families with an additional with single parents with children under 18 years old. There are an additional 31. And then non-family, so these are single family households, 273. Any questions so far in any of this?
Yeah, Susan, the FPL, the ACP we were talking about, that's twice FPL, right? But this is FPL.
Right, because federal poverty guideline for the Affordable Connectivity Program is 200% of federal poverty guideline. So a family of four with a family median income of $50,000 or $55,000 will meet the income eligibility guidelines and will be eligible for that $30 a month discount.
Right, so it's a lot more than the 4.5% that you show just meeting federal poverty guidelines.
Exactly, for that benefit in particular.
Right.
I have a question as well.
Mhm.
I'm a little bit, I think I sent everyone the information regarding the Maine Broadband Coalition, and they had over 1,500 households in Maine, and I kind of questioned that.
I'm not sure where they got their statistic.
Well, I went through the town manager,
Okay.
David Kinney, and I asked him because I was how can the population over a 10-year period just increase to a little over 100, yet we had over 500 households. Your numbers seem a little bit more in line with what they had originally, but this is what was on the the Maine Coalition speed test for Lincolnville, over 1,500 households. So I'm just wondering, and he said that was from the 2020 census.
So these are 2020 census. This is from
I wonder if that's households or that's possible locations. Because if you look at I was able to see what they're calling the fabric data, which is sort of all potential buildings. I believe it's all potential structures that could possibly have internet. And for Lincolnville, there are 1,483 of those. So that might be the number that they're using there.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily households at all. I don't know exactly what goes into it.
Okay, well, I was just that's why I was a little confused as to how there was such a wide discrepancy.
Well, and keep in mind too, that these are families that complete the US Census data. So this does not include any of your seasonal homes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So the other data set that we do use is the broadband adoption. And this has been some interesting data, especially since the pandemic. Of the 921 homes, sorry, I've got an Amber Alert going on here. Hang on. Okay. Of the 921 homes, 871 have a computer. 833 have a broadband connection. Now, I always tell people when we hit this number, it doesn't mean it's a good broadband connection. It just means it's a broadband connection. So this does not include cellular as broadband. This could be anything from a 7/1 connection on a DSL connection to a fiber connection. And then it breaks it down by homes. So of the 921 homes, there are about 40 homes that have family income of $10,000 or less that have a computer, and 35 that do have a broadband subscription. And then it breaks it down. It breaks all the income ranges out. You can see, as you get up to the higher amount, 390 have a computer, 377 have a broadband connection. So, income makes a difference here. These numbers.
Where did this data come from again?
Say that again.
Where did this specific data come from in terms of computers?
This comes from American Community Survey data, which is U.S. Census data. Okay. And this was released in, this is 2018. They haven't updated this to 2020 yet.
I didn't realize they collected this. This is great.
It's one of the newer data sets that they've been collecting. This one is interesting too. So we've been seeing this number change a bit since the pandemic. So this is based on individuals, right? And so of the households that have students 18 years and younger, 293 have a computer. And the reason for that is because the schools have made sure that students have computer to participate in remote classrooms. In our state, we're very lucky because our junior high and high school students, most all have some type of a device that they can use. And then, of course, during the pandemic, the younger classes had one as well. What's the change in this since the pandemic is that prior to the pandemic, it wasn't unusual to see one device in a household. That no longer is the case because you had multiple people who needed a device to participate in remote work or remote school. So you're seeing more devices in a household. This also, this breaks it down of the houses that have 65 and older. There's 565, 506 have a computer. 481 do not have 481 have a broadband connection. These are numbers I think that are just interesting to look at as you're trying to get an idea of what's going on in the town as far as broadband, computers, et cetera, et cetera.
Would you mind saying again what having a broadband connection means on this?
So this means it does not mean you have a cellular connection. It means that you're using anything from, it's not dial-up. So it's anything from like a DSL 7/1 to a fiber. It's all encompassing. So what this doesn't say is, of all of these homes that have a broadband connection, doesn't say, are they happy with their broadband connection? It just says that they have one. It doesn't say, what their speeds are. So it's always, I remember telling this to the county commissioners in Hancock, and they said, oh, well, we don't have a broadband problem then. And so, I had to very quickly, I've learned from there, you always do this little disclosure that it doesn't mean it's good.
I have a question on the data. Does this mean that every data point you have here completed the survey, or are these projections to some degree?
Well, I think that, that when they send the census takers out, they do a really good effort to connect with every home in a community. But there's a margin of error. I think that I don't think you ever get 100%. So I think that these are, when I look at statistics like this, they sort of give an overall of the community, but it doesn't mean that every single person in the community has been surveyed. So I think you have to take it, there's a plus and minus in each of these statistics.
I think American Community Survey is just a subsample, and they would have to project. I think, Jay, you're right. They have to then extrapolate based on the total number. Because in 2018, for instance, there was no
Right.
census, and I don't remember how detailed my own census form was. I know some years you can get one in intermediate years, and I think that's the American Community Survey where they ask lots of extra questions.
Yeah, I was just wondering because our household didn't get one. So,
Yeah, I think it's a subsample, and it's not the 10-year thing. It's more often than that.
More
Yeah.
often. Like one of the new ones that we haven't seen, I haven't seen the statistics yet, but they've been polling on remote workers and pre and post pandemic. So we haven't seen that data set yet, but that also is going to show, I think will be interesting to see, because how many people became remote workers as a result of the pandemic and stayed remote.
Oh, fascinating. So what's the next step?
So the next step, I'm going to send you all this spreadsheet so that you can take a look at it. So now as we're thinking about writing this plan, so then we're going to start putting together a draft. And you as a committee, right, we as a team need to think about, what are we going to focus on? Are we going to look at making sure that we have a plan for the older adults in your community? Is there a plan? We've talked about the FCC Affordable Connectivity Program. We know that you have low-income families in your community. Do we have a plan for promoting that FCC ACP benefit? Does the community think about adding in an additional benefit? So some communities will raise some funds and then offer an additional subsidy for some low-income homes. The community can decide, maybe we want to make sure that folks 70 and older can have access to broadband so they can participate in telehealth visits. So I think, what is it? So it's important for all of you to determine what is important as we write this plan. What are some of the things that you want us to focus on?
Any ideas from the committee?
Can I ask a question before we go there?
Sure can.
You've done many of these, you've looked at many different communities. I would love to hear some top line sort of observations from you about how we compare to other towns in Maine, and whether or not those comparisons help us answer the question of what we want to emphasize.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Stephen. One thing is that you have a higher number of homes that have a higher per family capita income. So, we know that, and higher educational attainment. But then there still is a good percentage of people who, do not have those higher educational degrees and who are low income. And so, as a community, when you're bringing in when you decide to build a fiber connection to the community, a fiber to the home solution, there are two paths that you go down. The one that I like is the altruistic, right? Making sure that nobody is left behind, making sure that if affordability is an issue and why people can't connect, that you as a community have a solution for that. The other part of that is and it's what the broadband people want to hear, right? The internet service provider take rate, right? You want more people to subscribe to that network because that means that you have a better return on investment. And so both are equally important, So I'm a chameleon. When I've got broadband people in the room, I'm going to talk about return on investment. I'm not going to talk about, low income families, et cetera, et cetera. It's important because if we can make sure that low income families have a broadband connection and can afford it, then that means the take rate's going to be higher, right? And so I think that you sort of are the best of both worlds within your community. You have a good blend of higher income, higher educational attainment, but you also have a significant number of the population that don't meet those levels. So in communities, when they're looking at, it's just sort of like pick some focus, right, of what you want to do in your plan. I think that Maine in general, we have an older population. So having a plan to address older adults adopting technology and the reasons of why, combating isolation and loneliness, and having the ability to have telehealth visits. In the first year of the pandemic, telehealth visits increased 16,000% across the country. And we haven't seen statistics yet, but we will. Will there be better healthcare outcomes in our communities if people have access to healthcare with video conference telehealth? Because maybe they don't have a vehicle, or they can't afford the gas to get to a doctor's appointment. So I think in your plan, having being able to addressing your older adults in the community, I think is an important part of your plan. From there, what's next, right? And so some communities focus on their students. How do you keep students in the community, and does broadband help with that, right? They can get remote jobs, they can attend school remotely. Do you do a focus on some of your high school students? Some communities will bring together a committee of high schoolers to create surveys to give to junior high and high school students. We've got some samples of some of that work that we are very happy to share with you. On the affordability piece, we have a program of offering an additional benefit. And I'm happy to share that document with you so you can see what that might look like. And remember, all of this is all about you. What you're all comfortable with, what you're gonna put in front of all of your entire community beyond this committee. So those are some suggestions of things to do. I think the other part of this is public access. Did you tell me, and I'm sorry if you told me this already, but are there community hotspots in Lincolnville?
We have them at the library and the town office.
That's right.
I don't know if we have any others.
Store?
Oh, the general store.
The general store. Oh, yes, that's right. So, and so some committees will think about, do they want to put additional community hotspots out in public places? And we've seen them down on town wharfs where, you got fishermen coming in and out and they can connect to Wi-Fi. There's some there, and do you promote it in your community that there's public Wi-Fi because you have a seasonal or even people passing through as they're driving along the coast of Maine? Do you put up signs that say free Wi-Fi in Lincolnville? We've had businesses or communities that design decals that they could put into the windows of all the local businesses that have free Wi-Fi. The McDonald's, the hairdressers, the grocery store. You can go to the parking lot and there's a free Wi-Fi. And so promoting free Wi-Fi in the community sends a really good message, not only to the people visiting, but also you've got to, you're convincing your community why broadband is important, right? And so it's a great public awareness that doesn't cost a lot of money. We're going to want to create a budget for all of this. So, there's, what's the funding look like? I'll make sure that there's a one of the pages in here are the grants that are available. So you're like Maine Community Foundation, their countywide grant opens up in December, it's due in February. Those are $10,000 grants. In community projects, $10,000 can go a long way, right? And then if you have a budget and there's a funding opportunity, maybe it's to one of the banks. There's a lot of community giving at banks. 5,000 here, 5,000 there starts to add up, and you can then check things off of your list. You might want to do a lending library of devices. Could be focused on your older adults. It could be focused on the general public. Enlisting the library to be able to loan those devices out might be really helpful. We have communities that are raising money for digital navigators, part-time digital navigators to be housed at library or town offices to help people connect, apply for the ACP benefit, or facilitate a class that NDEC can provide via Zoom. So those are the things that you as a committee have to determine. What's your priority? What is it that you want to accomplish as a result of this digital equity plan? And I just gave you a lot of information that is probably, so I apologize for that.
No, it's very exciting. And I'm sure all of us were thinking of things as you were talking that were resonating. As you well know, for example, we are a tourist community. We have a beach. We have the Islesboro Ferry. And of course, we have a significant seasonal population, both because we are both coastal. So we have, Penobscot Bay front, and then we have several lakes. So we have a lot of seasonal people. And I think particularly when I think of Lincolnville Beach and Route 1, that's we're, as you well know, between, Camden Hills and Acadia, we're kind of on the thoroughfare to go there. So, and we have a pretty significant population. As you may know, we have, because of the way it's spread out, we have two different post offices, one for the beach and one at Lincolnville Center, which is also reflective of the, geography of the town. Obviously, it always comes down to money. So there's it's kind of like, yes, we'd like one of each. So I'm sure there's nothing you talked about that one or another of us, if not all of us, wouldn't like to have. The question I have for you is, when we're figuring out sort of the realm of the possible as opposed to the ideal, number one, should we be using the 50-10 metric that is used that's what's used for the ACP, right?
50 over 10, yes.
Yeah. So that's question number one. Should we be using that as the metric, since that's the ACP metric? Or should we be using, I think the MCA one is 100 over 100. Yeah. You're saying 100 over 100.
100 over 100.
Okay. So that then has a significant financial implication, right? Because the ACP is $30 for 50 over 10. So then my question.
Well, it's $30 towards the broadband bill. Doesn't matter what the plan is.
Oh.
Right. So if somebody has 100 over 100,
okay.
they're still going to get the $30 per month.
Okay. All right. So then, one calculation, one mathematical calculation that would need to be made is, if we took the most expansive view of this, which is we want it to be available to everyone in town. Everyone at that point would mean, and this is where the question of residences versus businesses comes in, right? And I would argue that we should look at it in the most expansive. So we should have a high, medium, and low case. And the high case is the most expansive and most inclusive. And that would include all residents. That would mean seasonal as well as permanent, but it would exclude non-residential structures. Okay, which is where the difference in the numbers comes in the data that you showed us. And if that's the case, is it possible to figure out what the maximum amount of money would be that we would need, we meaning the community, to provide a subsidy beyond the $30? Because obviously, I presume the people who are above the subsidy line don't require a subsidy. So we're talking about those who are below the subsidy line, okay? So what is the amount of money that's required to provide those in that category with enough to meet what is our local provider's cost? Our local provider being the operative word here, because LCI, as you know, is charging $89 a month for 100 over 20. And if that's your only option, it doesn't really matter what the average prices are, because you're not eligible for average prices. You're only eligible for the price we have here. So what would be the amount that we would need to raise to meet that? And then that gives us, I mean, to me, this digital equity piece is the most important piece that the Broadband Committee itself could continue working on, as opposed to the overall LCI negotiation, which the select board is going to take over. Right. The broadband equity piece, I think, really, we could and should have a point of view. You know, it's obviously we don't have any statutory authority to make anything happen, but we should be able, I'm just making it up, you know, we should be able to say to the select board, based on the work that, you know, has come out of what you've done, we have figured out that there are, you know, 374 households that need a subsidy that would take them from $30 to $89, right, which is $59 times 354, and therefore that's how much we would need to come up with, either in grants that we apply for, or, you know, town appropriation, or whatever, however you want to make up that number. But we have to have the actual number that we're aiming for before we can have a realistic conversation, because otherwise it's all theoretical.
Can I just make one point? The other part of this is I helped the neighbor with the subsidy to get the application in, and I also want to say that there is still an installation cost of $100. So I'm just saying
That's a very good point, Arlene.
Yes.
As opposed to the monthly bill, there's the connection fee.
So when you look at an $89, if that's the sort of the average baseline price from Lincolnville, you're right. $30 from ACP brings it to $59. Well, does another $30 subsidy, does that make sense? Would people be able to pay $29 a month, an additional $30 a month? So, I mean, that could be one way to do that. You know, then it's $30 times 12 months per household, right? And so we can back into those numbers. If it's too many homes, you then might initially say, okay, well, we're going to offer this to this subgroup within the community, either older adults or maybe families with students that are in school. I mean, you can come up with your own criteria for how to do this. You can also there's some towns that are considering different layers of subsidy, right? And so that's another option to do. But I think I think that, if you're using that $89 as sort of the baseline price, which is what I would do if, 100 over 20 at $89, $30 ACP, then what's we can do some math around the $30 and then how many homes and what are we actually talking about?
Yeah, Susan, do you have a sense of what becomes affordable at different income levels? I mean, you just said add 30, so it's 29. Is that?
It's the $1 million question, right?
Okay, it's not something that you guys have sort of have experience actually nailing. Huh?
On a national level, we see that, from the groups that I work with on a national level, they think $10 a month, which works if it's a $70, a month broadband connection, $30 ACP, $30 subsidy, and then $10 a month from the home. But that may not work because rural broadband is a little more expensive than broadband where there are multiple providers and a lot more competition. I think that Arlene's point, though, is still, how do you afford the $100 installation fee or whatever those costs are going to be? And is that going to be a barrier of why someone doesn't subscribe to broadband? I think that it's a hard number to determine what people can afford and can't afford. But I think you make your best effort and see and see how many people participate, and then how many are still not subscribing to broadband, and what's the issue behind that?
Right, and is some of that data being gathered in the other towns, or not?
Yeah, so we're going to see it as towns are starting to offer that benefit, who's subscribing and who's not. I've got a project in Baileyville that they know exactly how many how many homes are connected to the network up there. Well, in that case, they have the competitor is Spectrum, and there's an older population, and even the people on the committee don't want to give up their remote controls for TV. Wow. Right, and so our job is to provide a cutting the cord class so that people can figure out that you can still have your remote control and do video streaming, right? But it's a change. No one likes change. They want to just go in, click, click, click. And so that's become a barrier of why people are not subscribing to this fabulous fiber network that's in Baileyville.
Do we have a way to find out how many people in Lincolnville are currently signed up for the ACP program?
There's overall in Maine, there's only 57,000 families across the whole state, and almost the whole state is eligible. So I can see if we can break it, if I can get the numbers specifically for Lincolnville. We may be able to get it from the FCC. So I'll give that a shot, see what we can find out.
Okay. I mean, that's such low-hanging fruit that one of the first priorities of our committee should be to try to get everyone who's eligible for the ACP program to sign up. I mean,
absolutely,
$30 off your bill.
Absolutely,
I agree. And hosting, having the library host some classes, the town office to host some classes, and to promote them. I like the positive in an ACP program. Did you know you could get this broadband discount? Everybody likes a discount, right? And so versus saying, if you're low income, you qualify, right? Yeah. And so, protecting people's, respecting their integrity is important. And I think that you do it in a positive, that hey, there's a discount. Why not, right? Let's get you all signed up. And it's in, Arlene, if you have somebody to get online, to apply for that, it can be overwhelming if you have minimal technical skills, or even if you do, when they talk about uploading documents and asking all kinds of questions. So it can be a little intimidating. So the classes help people figure out before they apply, what is it that they're actually applying for and what is it going to look like.
I should know the answer to this, but does NDEC have a class to apply for ACP?
Does NDEC, does it have it what?
A class.
Oh, yes, we have lots of classes around ACP. Absolutely.
How to apply, or am I eligible? Right.
Yep. And we have a few instructors that do a fabulous job in teaching how to use that. All of our providers in Maine are participating providers. Lincolnville, LCI is a participating provider. They have when I talked to Alan Hinsey about it, they have a place on their website. But, again, if you don't know where to go and you don't know what to do, how does anybody know that LCI has a place on their website that they can apply for the ACP benefit? So, a lot of it is just public awareness.
One thing the committee should just be aware of is this is sort of bleeding into the next agenda, but if we somehow applied with LCI for the Reach Me line extension, one of the requirements is that they offer a 50/10 plan that is fully subsidized. So if we partnered with LCI, then they would, I guess, have to offer a plan that would be free for people
So that came out of the Maine Connectivity Authority, and it was pitched to providers to offer a 50/10 connection for $30, so that basically if someone applied for the ACP benefit, they would pay $0. I have a little hard time with it because it means that if you are low income, you are not going to get anything better than a 50/10 connection. And so are we saying, and so it's just it's a philosophical dilemma, I think.
That's a shame that couldn't just have been 100/100, and it's not like they're really, are they, I mean.
And the issue with that is that, flipping over to the provider side, it doesn't meet their return on investment. Right, 100/100, they're not going to be able to do that, pay for all of the costs associated with offering, the backhaul to give everybody 100/100 connection. And because there's not a lot of competition in rural areas, that you just don't have the infrastructure here. And so,
of course, the elephant in the room is, why does LCI have to charge $89 for 100/20?
Plus a phone.
So I've had a conversation with them about this because part of at least, and I don't know if they've changed it yet, but one of the issues is that you have to have a phone line.
Right.
Even with a fiber connection. And so my understanding is that they are working on removing that, which then would decrease the cost you would just be paying for a fiber connection, not a fiber and a phone.
But the $89.
No, the $89 is only the fiber connection. I get billed an additional $15. But let's set that aside for a moment. The fact is that part of the whole strategy here, in fact, the underlying strategy for our whole broadband effort, is to have a public-private partnership with LCI, where by applying together with the town, they can increase their total revenue from this marketplace. And so, the key to that is, if you want to decrease the cost per consumer, yet at the same time increase the total revenue, then you have to obviously increase the total number of subscribers, which is why the take rate, as you always say, is so critical. Mm-hmm. And, it might be possible, since we have really expert negotiators negotiating on behalf of the town, that they would be able to get LCI, I'm just making it up, let's say instead of $89 for 100/20, it was $70, right? Which is still much higher than both the state and the national average, but very significantly lower, $20 a month, than where we're at now. Then the 30 plus 30 it only leaves 10, which is a little bit more doable for a larger number of people, certainly. And you start to have, some flexibility in your take rates, because now you're getting closer to what is available to people. I mean, obviously, this is a sensitivity analysis with a sliding scale. As the cost to the consumer goes down, the number of the take rate goes up, and presumably the yield to the ISP also can increase even with lower rates per user, which is where we want to get to.
Right, and so in part of your negotiations with LCI is if we increase the take rate, here's our baseline. And if we can increase this take rate by X amount of homes, would you consider lowering the price per home?
Right.
We'll do our best to get as many people on this network in Lincolnville. But in doing that, what does that mean in the overall cost to each of our homes? I would go there. I would absolutely go down that route.
Yeah, that's where I'm suggesting, and I'm also suggesting that the plan from the side of the town, and by the way, LCI would be asked to help with this as well, because we both share the same interest in increasing the take rate. So if that means, we run some community seminars, either in person or on Zoom or both. Maybe there are 3 or 4 dates where we offer people, come to the school and we're going to do a session on all of this stuff. And by the way, it's recorded. So if you can't come, you can watch it online. And we'll also help you with your applications at that same event. We'll have people there to help you if you want. Please bring a utility bill or something that proves your address, whatever it is. If we had a campaign like that, then I think it would make it much more likely that we could increase our take rate, and therefore LCI would be, more willing to both reduce their rate, and we would have the benefit of increasing our community coverage. We're never going to get to 100%. Obviously, there are going to be people who, no matter what you do, are not going to want to do it. I mean, that's always true.
Yeah, Jay.
This is sort of an aside, but is there a substantial cost to an ISP in delivering the difference between 50 over 10 and 100 over 100? Or are these various stratas that are offered really a marketing and profitability scheme? I mean, does it cost $60 more to do 100 over 100 for the ISP versus something less?
Yeah, it's all about backhaul, right? And so if you think about it, a good example of that is on coax cable networks. All of a sudden at 5 o'clock, all the speeds go down. It's because they've oversubscribed. There's the trunk that's feeding that community isn't big enough for everybody to be on and maximizing, receiving the maximum speed that they've subscribed to. And so when you're looking at an ISP delivering 100 over 100, their cost is going to go up because of the bandwidth to support that network. So yes, there's a related cost when you're looking at symmetrical and higher, I mean, that's what you really want is symmetrical speeds, right? But even just getting to the point where you've got better upload speeds than than you have right now, or better than 10. But it's going to cost more money. It's going to cost the provider more money in order to provide those services.
So do you think that's why LCI isn't offering 100 over 100 in Lincolnville typically?
Could be the cost. I mean, broadband providers pay a lot for backhaul, right? Because it's rural, and they're spending a lot of money per mile. There's not a lot of when you think about a trunk coming in on Route 1, there's not a lot of providers that are using that backhaul. So it's being supported very often by one provider. You're not having, it's not like Consolidated and Spectrum and LCI are all sharing the same infrastructure, so it's expensive. And in rural areas, when houses are spread out and you don't have a lot of cluster of homes, it's going to be more expensive.
Michael.
The back to what Stephen was talking about. I see where this 50-10 MCA grant thing gets in the way quite a bit of trying to push 100-100. If a consumer and a town is faced with 50-10 and the FCC is paying for the whole thing for this person, versus we're going to raise another 30 for this person, somehow we're going to raise an additional 30 and they're going to have to pay 10, it becomes a much more difficult sell, particularly since at 50-10 you can still have your Netflix and your telemed and your online classes. So I see your point about that MCA decision. At the same time, does that solve the problem or doesn't it?
50/10, certainly is not horrible, but in today's world, we're symmetrical. I'm on video, you're on video. We're using the same bandwidth, back and forth, right? And so, and then if you have multiple people in the household that are all using a lot of bandwidth, 50/10 is not going to do really well.
Right.
So do have a question. I've got a question. Do you know how many seasonal homes are in Lincolnville? Is there a way to find that out?
Probably.
I know it's a mystery in every single town. You're not alone.
Okay. I guess we'll just start by asking our town administrator.
I mean, the roughest way you could find out is just trying to see who has homestead exemptions on their taxes. That'll be the easiest way, just to see who's been here for more than a few years.
Right.
It wouldn't give you an exact picture, but it would definitely give you something to compare.
Yeah.
I'll find out.
I think if we could get some approximate, that would be helpful. One town counted how many of their tax bills went to out of state addresses. That was one other way that they tried to back into that number, but there's no standard formula across all these towns of how to determine how many are seasonal and not seasonal. But addressing, including the seasonal, especially because you're talking tourism, there's a piece there that you're appealing to the seasonal people who are going to, you want to subscribe to the network.
Yeah.
I know the town has provided for fundraising purposes address lists, and that's not a bad way to just look at every label and count how many are out of state, like you say.
But of course, the seasonal people would be less likely to qualify for or get the subsidy.
You're right, but you could increase your take rate regardless.
Of course, that's very important.
And the out-of-state people with summer homes might not qualify for a subsidy anyway.
Correct.
No, that's what I'm saying. They wouldn't.
Right.
Right. And what's the deal? So that's the other negotiation piece that you can have with LCI. To bring fiber to the home to seasonal residents, what's the deal that they're going to cut, right? So, there's a disadvantage of a seasonal home that says, oh, just turn on my service for July and August, because it still costs money to run the infrastructure to provide the bandwidth. And so some communities negotiate a deal for seasonal people, right? 6 months on, 6 months off, and they can get it for this amount of money. It's worth a conversation with LCI around that. It's to their advantage and for their return on investment if you can keep your seasonal homes on longer. That said, seasonal homes often will keep a service year round because they're using more security cameras and burglar alarm systems.
Well, I guess the real question is how many seasonal homes don't already have broadband?
Right.
The other piece of this is, you know, when I was trying to go over the 1,500 figure, which David said he got from of households, which he got from the 2020 census. I'm just saying that's where he got that number. And we wondering about the difference between looking at fiber to the home, all right, the fiber line going to the home, and say you have a multi-generation household, and perhaps you have 2 households there. So you're not really needing 2 lines to that house. It's probably one that is distributed, imagine. So those are the other questions I have, is when we're looking at households that have multi-generations, or somebody has a business, or, you know, when we say, you know, what is it, FTTH, fiber to the home, what do we, you know, what kind of a line, how many lines do we actually need?
Does Lincolnville have that number for you?
No.
They don't have the number of
I
homes?
thought maybe LCI, you know.
No, I mean, that's what I meant, LCI. Does LCI have the number of homes that they can connect to?
I don't know.
So next steps. So on my side, I'm going to start to put the framework together for a draft, first draft of a digital equity plan. There'll be a lot of blank places that we're going to need to fill in. What I'd like to do is to get that, put that together over the next week or so, and then email it to all of you prior to our next meeting so that you'll have time to take a look at it.
Great.
I'm also going to send you, I'll follow up after today's meeting and send you the spreadsheet with the demographics that we talked about earlier. And then I have a sample of a community broadband benefit that I'll also send to you so you can start to take a look at it. I'll put this all in an email because there's a lot of things that we've talked about. But I think, you know, where, you know, would you benefit from having additional community hotspots, and where would they be? And would LCI help sponsor those? That's another question, right? How many seasonal homes? I'll take a look and see if we can sort of narrow down the number of homes that might need a subsidy, and so that we can start to put together a budget around that. Anything else that I'm missing here that we need to do? And
I don't think so. Any other steps from the committee? Why don't we schedule the next meeting now?
okay.
Hold on. What I want to do right now is see when our charge expires. This, so we can kind of go backwards from that, and we can always try to extend that. But does anyone remember off the top of their heads when the latest charge expires?
November 30th.
November 30th?
I think that's what it was, yeah.
Okay.
If we have a meeting in 2 weeks, that'll give me time to do the draft and get it to you to look at before our next meeting. And then if all of you can just start thinking about the priorities, and when you see the draft, you'll see there'll be, I'll be leading you towards what is it that we're gonna, you know, what you might want to consider in this plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's say November 3rd, Thursday, November 3rd. That sounds good to everyone.
Yep. And is it the same Zoom link we used tonight, right?
Yep, the same Zoom link.
Okay.
6
So
p.m.
the last broadband committee charge ended September 30th.
Yeah.
And you're saying it was only extended for 2 more months?
That's what Arlene remembered. It wasn't extended very long. I don't know how to find that right off the top of my head.
Okay.
I think David had, yeah, it was either in a meeting or one of your select board meetings, he mentioned it. So I think
Yeah,
it's notes.
it was a select board meeting where we approved it. I just,
It just seems odd to me, only 2 months. I mean, why bother?
And it's the same time, 6 o'clock?
yeah, 6 o'clock.
Great.
Let's see if I can see it really.
So that was, what was the date again?
It is in 2 weeks.
November 3rd.
Yep, November 3rd at 6 p.m.
If I wanted to show the committee some of the mapping stuff, and Susan might be interested if I just take a minute to do that.
Sure.
Is this a good time?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the question was based on LCI's map of where there is service, just a very simple, let's count how many homes are within certain distances from them. And I'm going to share my screen. So this doesn't speak so much to the work of digital equity. It's more something we might want for the grant, but again, it might be worth, Susan might be interested in just seeing it. So this is the map that we got from LCI that we verified with our own driving. I believe Steve Hand's conclusion was that the map is pretty good. There was one change on South Cobbtown Road or something. The green lines are where there's service. The purple is where they were installing service. And I think for the most part, according to Steve, these have already been installed. And the red is where they say there isn't any service, although there are quite a few more streets than that. So if you overlay that, let's say that we want, well, first of all, these are the locations of buildings in Lincolnville, according to the E911, the 911 database. So if you ask, how many of those places are further than 250 feet from a road with service? And you get, I counted these, well, not by hand. 17% of those locations are more than 250 feet away. 10% are more than 500 feet away. So sort of as a way of saying what is currently served or unserved, that might be one way to do it. I don't know if that works for the grant or not, but that was the conclusion there. Now, what's interesting, as I mentioned before, there's this database, they're calling it the Fabric database, which the FCC hired a firm to sort of do a nationwide database of locations that could be potentially served.
Mm-hmm.
There are restrictions on that. Internet providers can get it for purposes of filling out the forms they have to for the FCC, but you're not allowed to use it for network planning. You're not allowed to use it for estimating customers according to the terms of service. I think municipalities are allowed to get that data. Anyway, I saw the data and I ran those same numbers using that data. And what you find is in this 911 database, a location is generally where the mailbox is, basically, because that's what the fire department needs to know, how to get to the residents. This Fabric database is actually where the buildings are. So if you use that data, which again, Lincolnville as a municipality or LCI as a provider might be able to get, the question of is my building actually within 250 feet of a road goes up. The percentage of the town's locations which are more than 250 feet goes up from 17% to 25%. I'm sorry, to 34%. And the percentage that is 500 feet or more from a road goes from 10% up to 20%. which I think are much more grantable numbers. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. I don't know that we do anything else with it, but those numbers struck me as very interesting and pretty high.
So do we need an action to try and get a hold of that fabric data?
Well, I think it's sort of in the grant writing, and that's, I understand LCI is going to be doing that.
Okay, so just something for us to check on, I guess.
Yeah. And informally, I've seen the data and I can put dots on a map, but again, it's not according to the terms of service.
Okay.
All right.
So
that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Michael.
Good.
So I'm looking at the select board agenda from August 22nd, and I can confirm that our committee's charge ends November 30th. Susan, do you think that is enough time to finish the plan? If not, we can request that we extend the charge.
So you'll have a draft at our next meeting. So it depends on how much input that you can give me at that next meeting as you think about priorities, right? So, I think part of the things to think about, do you want a plan for affordability, a plan for your older adults in residents that might need technical assistance, community hotspots? I think something down at the town landing, town wharf would be wonderful. So I think the more that you can, as you're thinking through what are your priorities, then we can get the report wrapped up before the end of November.
Okay. With that being said, how does the committee feel about requesting that our charge is extended? Just so we're not, November 30th is kind of an arbitrary deadline, and if we feel like we could use more time, it sounds like we could do it, but we could also use more time if we want it.
Well, there's making the plan and then there's actually executing the plan.
Right.
Those are, yeah.
I sort of think that if you can, you could probably have this all together by the end of November, but that doesn't give you much wiggle room. I'd almost rather see you within your process, give yourself a little extra time. We still focus and target at the end of November, but if you have to go over by a week or more, at least you'll be covered.
Well, my question is what Mike said is, let's say we finish this work, and let's say that one of the action items is to do these community education sessions or education / sign-up sessions. Do we need to exist to do that? Or would the select board take that over and they would do it?
No, the select board will not take it over. I'll tell you that.
Right. So that's what I thought. So I think that there should be an update to the select board that says, here's where we're at. We are aiming to have our plan completed, which of course we're going to submit to you together with all of the background data on which it's based. And the plan, of course, will also include an action plan. And if the select board wants the action plan to be overseen by the broadband committee, then it would need to extend the lifetime of the broadband committee. If they don't, then they don't. But we're giving them the choice, because I have a feeling that the things we're talking about will require, even if it's, for example, even if it's just organizing, a town-wide session with NDEC or with Susan to sort of explain and then have a few people trained in helping people fill in the form that you could do right there. Even if we did that, that takes some manpower.
So I have a question. when you're when you do this plan, know that it's always going to be a work in progress, right? Because there are going to be different needs as time goes on. You know, you may do this plan and then you find that there is, you want to focus on your teenage population, or, you know, ramp up some of the efforts around your older adults. Your grant cycles are going to be variable throughout the year, right? And so, like, the Maine Community Foundation grant is due in February, and they don't make their announcements till June. So how is the committee going to be handling any of this as you're applying for funds, perhaps applying for funds?
Well, my understanding is that the committee would not be doing any of those applications anyway. The town would be doing them, and even if the committee did do them, by the way, it would still be with and through the town administrator. So I mean, I guess the question I have back to you, Susan, is, in your experience, and for a town like ours, is there an advantage to extending the lifetime of the broadband committee? Or once we've done this digital equity plan, and once the town has entered into negotiations with LCI, is everyone done and we all go home happy?
So I think whether it's the broadband committee or a subgroup off the broadband committee that's focused on the digital equity and digital inclusion plan, you're going to want to keep that going, because you don't want to do a plan that's going to sit on a shelf. You want to execute the plan. And if you leave it to your town fathers to do it, this isn't what they do, right? And so, you know, they may be the ones that submit the grant, but somebody else who understands the subject matter is going to end up writing the grant, whether there's a town, you know, a grant writer that you have for the town, or someone, you know, within the committee that's going to do it. So I think that, you know, for a digital equity plan, it's long haul. You know, it's not something that's going to be fixed, you know, overnight. You don't want it to, after all this work, you don't want to shelve it. You know, you want to make sure that, you know, when opportunities are out there for funding to continue to execute the plan, you want to be able to do that. And remember too, that we have a state digital equity and digital inclusion program that's going on. So I sit on that task force, and as the state writes grants, they're also looking at these local, because I've made sure that they're looking at all of these local plans that are being created. And so there may be opportunity for funding later on down the road to support some of these plans.
So this is what I want to propose. On Monday, I'm going to give an update to the select board. We have a standing agenda, broadband, and I'm going to ask if we can extend this charge to December 27th. That is the last select board meeting of the year, and that we would give our presentation on the Axiom feasibility study, as well as this plan, Susan, and let them know by December 27th, we will have completed the Axiom study and feasibility plan. It'll be done December 27th. However, we will want to continue work on implementing the plan in the new year. So let them know all of this on Monday, but just say for now, because the select board generally doesn't like approving a charge that's sort of way off into the future with items on the charge that they don't really have a good sense of yet. So I think extending it twice would make them feel better, because the select board has no issue extending charges as long as what's on that list is well defined.
So you're saying that for the December 27th meeting, there would be a recommendation for an extension of the broadband committee charge.
Correct. So extend it twice, essentially.
Extend it twice.
But just keep it bite size, which is to say on Monday, request that we extend it on Monday till December 27th. So we just have what's on that list. Is everyone?
And then I think we could get a new broadband committee, and those who have served tirelessly for a couple of years could leave, and then new people could come.
I don't think so.
I think that would be part of it also.
I'm leaving Lincolnville politics in June, so I do hope, since I'm moving to Rockport, so I do hope that at the very least, the very latest, we'll have implemented everything in the digital equity plan by then with all of you in Broadband 4.0.
Well, we'll make it a point to say that committee members do not necessarily have to be town residents.
That's right. They can be occasional visitors.
Can we vote on that one right now?
Okay, well, Susan, I mean, just speaking for myself, this is, wonderful and I think very exciting. And I think that some of the ideas are really quite doable and innovative. And, we should be able to do them. I mean, I wasn't surprised by your report on the demographic information. That was kind of what I thought it would look like. But I think that what to do with that and what that implies for action, that there were some new thoughts there. And, we should be able to really make a difference, which I do think is a different thing than just negotiating with LCI. I mean, I think the larger inclusivity piece is not a once and done, like Susan is saying, it's not a once and done thing. And there will probably be, God only knows how many more funding rounds and grant cycles and all of that. And so
I would also have the conversation with Mark around some of the things we talked about, that around take rate and affordability, and as he's doing that feasibility plan for you, that he could also include it, so you have it coming from the broadband plan as well as from your digital equity plan.
Okay.
well, we can do that, and also you can do that because occasionally you talk to him.
I do.
Okay.
All right. Anything else for Susan? Susan, thank you so much.
You'll get an email from me probably tomorrow, and and at any time just reach out if you have any questions, and we'll just keep this ball going up the hill.
All right, thank you.
All right, take care.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, Susan. Good
Bye-bye.
night, everybody.
Oh, Arlene, we still need you for the quorum. Don't go anywhere.
Oh.
If any of us leave, we got to shut the meeting down.
Oh, wait, I didn't. When did Jordan leave? Did anybody notice?
He left about 10 minutes ago.
All right.
To go somewhere.
And Steve Hand was in and out briefly.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
might have
that
been. He was probably driving back or from somewhere. Would be my guess. Okay, so agenda item number 5. We don't have to take very long on this, but are there any updates that anyone has about the MCA grants? Any clarifications or anything new that we've learned about them?
No, I don't think there's anything new. I did look on the website, and I shared that that data sheet of broadband across the U.S. That's kind of data, and it's only urban data, but the ReachMe specifications did reference that, and I guess it would only be to those ISPs that are serving urban areas, which that's really not the problem in Maine.
I didn't understand how that relates to us.
Yeah, well, I was hoping that there was going to be some crossover there, and about the only message I got out of it, that if you look across the U.S., it's highly variable. Just from $30 to $200 for the same service. So I don't think we can learn much about that, except I'm curious as to why they referenced that, in their specifications. It had to do with that the price of something that the grant supports had to provide a price comparable to what's in that database, which seemed to tell us nothing. I was hoping it was going to tell us something, and only after I shared it did I realize that it was really not very helpful.
No other comment.
Okay. Anything else from Michael or Arlene on that?
So,
Okay.
The only
Yeah.
other thing I want to, I'm trying to think a couple of, maybe during the summer, even earlier, there was a discussion about the price of broadband coming down, that the, the amount of, 100 over 100 could become more affordable as that comes down to providers. But I'd have to look, and I remember sending that information to people, but I'll have to go back and kind of look where that was through the Waldo, the 5-town Waldo Google group had that information. So.
Okay. Okay, so action items. So we're all going to brainstorm about what we'd like to see in the digital equity plan for the next meeting.
And when are we going to do that brainstorm? Right now?
No. So action items for
On our own.
all our homework. And then
But do we need a working group or a prior?
A pre-meeting meeting.
no.
So we're just going to each bring our separate priorities to the next meeting with Susan.
Yeah.
And say, this is what our group thinks without our group really thinking about it.
That's my thinking. Do you guys think that's a terrible idea, or?
I'm uncertain, as you can tell.
we're all going to receive the document from Susan. I think we'll all look through it. And we could even meet before Susan comes on if you want to have a little bit of time by ourselves.
That's a good idea.
Well, we
Bring Susan on a half hour after the meeting starts.
Sure.
Okay.
And we'll have the benefit of Mike's minutes where he's noted down the things she said.
Right.
Well, it will all be in the document she sends us.
Okay. So I have homework, which is to request to the select board that we extend the charge. We probably won't vote on that Monday because they like to have a heads up, but 2 weeks after that, we could vote on that. Find out from David how many people have signed up for the homestead exemption, and also find out how many tax bills go out of state. So we'll have both those numbers. Are there any other action items for other committee members that I'm missing?
So can I just, are we meeting a half hour earlier or something?
No, it's still 6.
Susan come.
Susan's going to come a half hour later.
I'm going to tell her. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay. There are no other action items under non-agenda items. I do not have an update regarding LCI. They were going to reach out to us, and so I haven't heard any update yet. We'll perhaps get an update on Monday, but no news.
It's in good hands.
Yeah. Any other non-agenda items from the committee? All right, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion moved by Stephen.
Second?
We have a second by Jay. Any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Arlene, how do you vote?
Let's leave.
Adjourn.
Okay, Jay,
Adjourn.
Stephen,
Adjourn.
and I vote adjourn as well. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a good week. A good 2 weeks, everybody.
See you in 2 weeks.